Hey guys, it's Cam from Victory, and today I'm going to show you how to install our roof rack on the 5th Gen 4Runner. Alright, this should be everything you get in your box. You should have 2 side pieces, 8 crossbars, a front and rear fairing, 6 mounting brackets, your bolt pack, and then some edge trim. Alright, so the easiest way to do this will be to assemble this on the ground and then have a friend help you lift it onto the truck. So go ahead and lay everything out, and then we'll start mounting these crossbars. I'm going to start by assembling the crossbars and the side rails, and to do that you're going to use the small button heads and the small washers. 2 per side. You'll notice you have a hole milled into one side of these rails, and you'll want that to face up. And that's going to let you slide in your T-nuts for mounting. Now this whole rack is aluminum, but the mounts are steel, so they can hold up to all the stuff you're about to load onto this. All right, now that we have all this assembled, we can go ahead and mount the front and the rear fairings. All right, we'll install the front fairing with the same button heads and washers, but we'll have a flange nut on the back. And you'll want the bent flange at the top and this curved portion at the bottom. So you notice that there's some adjustability in this front fairing. You're going to want to make sure this is all the way up and then snug it up a little bit. So that way when we set it down on the roof, we know it's not going to contact before we want it to. And then we can adjust that once it's on the roof. Now same thing on the back. You want to make sure that's all the way up and then snug it down for now. All right, now that we have the rack assembled, we can go ahead and remove our stock crossbars. You can just use a plastic pry tool like this. There's gonna be a clip about 1/3 of the way in on each side. So you'll just get under there, pop that clip, and then you can tilt it back and pull that off. Do that for all 4 caps. Once you have the caps off, you can go ahead and remove the rails with the 12mm socket. And then go ahead and remove the rails. All right, the front 2 mounts are going to look like this, and they'll take 2 rubber bumpers. That way we don't have to do any drilling, and these feet will sit on the roof. So just push and twist them into the holes. Just like that, and do the same on the other bracket. All right, now this bracket is going to mount in this orientation on the inside of the rack, just like this. So go ahead and mount that with 2 button head bolts, flange nuts, and washers. And leave it loose for now. Okay, the middle mounts are going to look like this. And this long leg is going to be pointing towards the front of the vehicle. So this is the passenger side. It's going to go just like this. Same thing, 2 button head bolts, washers, and flange nuts. Okay, now this rear mount will go just under the logo, and this V will be towards the top. All right, so these middle mounts are offset so that this bracket is centered on the roof rack. So you're gonna have to trim this factory rubber just a little bit. So what you can do is install this mount or just put it in place, and then you can see where you're gonna have to trim it. So I'm just gonna mark it right here and trim the end of this off so that it sits flush with this bracket once we put the rack on. So you'll end up with something like this once it's trimmed.
Hey, we're in.
Hey, boom. All right, now you can do this before or after you put the roof rack on, but I thought it'd be easier to put the rack on and then just lift up before it's tightened down to do this. But what you're gonna wanna do is put some RTV, quite a bit of RTV, underneath these brackets and in the holes. So that way when you tighten the hardware in, it forms a watertight seal and you don't get any water in your headliner. So what I'm gonna do is lift this up and then put some RTV on the mounting surface under this bracket. Don't be afraid of using too much, but be careful because it's messy. All right, once you have that coated, go ahead and set your bracket back down. And then go ahead and do the same thing on the other 3 brackets. All right, once you have all 4 brackets RTV'd, go ahead and make sure they're all in place. And then we're gonna start putting the hardware in. What you wanna do is add some RTV to these holes. That way when you put the bolt through, there's gonna be a watertight seal. And then you wanna make sure you start all of these by hand. Tighten them as far as you can by hand so you don't strip them out. These are the M8 bolts and the larger washers in your bolt pack. Once you have them started, you can go ahead and tighten them down with a 3/16 Allen. And I should mention, you'll want to keep these loose while you're doing that. And then we'll go around and tighten the rest of the hardware once these mounts are tight. You should see a little bit of RTV squeeze out from under the washer once you get it tightened all the way. Then you know you have a good seal. All right, once you have the mounts tightened down to the roof, you can go ahead and tighten down the hardware to the rack itself and to the crossbars. We'll leave the fairings loose for now, and I'll show you the options for that in a minute. Now there's a lot of adjustability for these crossbars, and that'll depend on what you're mounting. But for now, you can tighten them all down in the center. That way they're all evenly spaced. And all this hardware will use a 5/32 Allen. All right, now the last step is gonna be to add some trim to the front and rear fairings. And you're gonna get 1 roll in your box. So what we're gonna do is trim enough for the front, and then the rest will be used for the rear fairing. Okay, so what I did here is I started on the other end, just past this point, and I brought the trim all the way to this end, and then again cut it just past this corner so it wraps around the corner. And you can either cut it like I did afterwards, or you can cut it ahead of time and then put it on. This is about 41.5 inches, and it'll leave you with about 10.5 inches to use in the back. So what we're gonna do in the back is cut this in half and put it on either end. So same thing in the rear. You just come around this corner with each half of what you had left over, and that's going to be the point on each side where the rack contacts the roof. All right, now that we have this trim in place, we can go ahead and loosen these again, push the fairing all the way down against the roof, and then tighten it up. And then go ahead and repeat this on the rear fairing. Now we offer this front fairing with or without a light bar cutout, so if you're installing one with a light bar, you can check out Daryl's Tacoma roof rack video where he installs one. All right, I installed the full length rack. We also have a standard length rack, which is only the length of the factory rails. So that installation will be the same. You'll just have 2 less mounts. All right guys, it's that easy, but if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, 269-459-8447, or shoot us an email, info@victory4x4.com.